Hi, and welcome to The Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and this is a show where we feature authors talking about their latest books and experts in the world of writing and publishing, because more than that, what we want you to do is find a good book this week to read, but if you can't find one, consider writing one yourself, and we're here to help you do that. Our guest this segment is Lisa Brisse, and she has written Michael Jackson, The Man in Our Mirror, a reflection of our collective soul. And it's a true story about the miraculous synchronicities that mysteriously connected two improbable souls, Michael Jackson and a small-town Midwestern teenager named Lisa Brisse, dating back to the 80s and continuing on up to Michael's untimely death and beyond. And Lisa was led on a magical journey of the spirit that not only awakened her soul to a reality beyond what we see, but also gave her profound insight into the human struggle between ego and spirit. Her book shows how Michael Jackson magnified and reflected this struggle back to us, and how we can empower ourselves with hope and purpose when we understand his message, that we can heal the world when we heal the wounds of our own hearts through love. And I know a little bit about the background and story of this book, so welcome, Lisa, finally.
Thank you.
I know it's been a long haul.
It has been a long haul, and I just appreciate all of your help with it.
Well, this was an amazing connection that you felt with Michael since childhood, and as I worked on this book with you, and I began to see these amazing connections and synchronicities that actually happened to you. I mean, this is really real. And so why don't you tell us about how Michael first came into your life?
Well, it was way back in 1982, and I was 13 at the time. And, I always knew of who Michael Jackson was and the Jackson 5, but I didn't necessarily resonate with him and his music until my bus ride to school, which back in Minnesota, it was about a 45-minute ride, and of course, I would listen to the music, the radio. And coming from a family of musicians, I was a music lover, and there was this song that would come on the radio that not just captured my ear, but captured my soul, and I was like, wow, that song has such an interesting sound to it. And I didn't know who it was at first, and then, of course, I found out, and it was Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. And that was the first experience of kind of opening up to who is this person. And I, like anybody else at that time, was, I think, mesmerized as a fan, especially, and then I had seen his videos on MTV and saw Motown's 25th anniversary when he actually performed Billie Jean live for, I think, the first time.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of, okay, he's got my attention. So that's how it started.
Right. And then you started feeling like a special connection as these synchronicities would happen, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't until probably the late 80s, I think around 1988, when his Bad album started coming out, that then it was just more, I liked his music, and that, I was a fan like everybody else, but there was something deeper that I was drawn to. I started to get these feelings of that on some level I knew him on a soul level, and he was very, very familiar to me. And it kind of puzzled me, but I've been a writer ever since I was in sixth grade. I've been journal writing ever since, thanks to my sixth grade teacher. And I was always thinking about things, bigger, the world, and I really had a deep caring for the world, even back in my teenage years. And it was around the late 80s when I started to feel this familiarity with his soul that I started to do some research. And back then we didn't have the internet, so I had to go to the actual library and look up the microfiche, and I was looking up interviews of things that he was saying, and I found that he was saying his view of the world was sometimes he would say the very thing that I had written in my journal just a couple of days before, and I thought, wow, there's something here. And
I know that there really were some very tangible things that happened. For example, your mother went to have a psychic reading, right?
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, it's funny because when I started getting this strong feeling and connection. I started to get a feeling that he would come into our life one day, my
Yeah.
family's life. And I mean, at that time, I thought, okay, yeah, Lisa, okay, you're just a fan like everybody else. Everybody wants to meet
And you were in
Michael
the
Jackson.
Midwest.
And in the Midwest, small
Right.
town of 900 people. And at that point, he was at the pinnacle of his career. I mean, it couldn't have been.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I didn't tell anybody, except the only person I could tell was the only one I knew who would be open to it, and that was my mom. And, you know, I said to her, I don't know what this is, and but I feel like on some level I know Michael Jackson's soul, and I feel like he's going to come into our life one day.
And you've got the kind of mom that probably said, "Okay, hon, yeah, that's true."
Well, you know, she was
Whatever.
always so ahead of her time,
Right.
And you know, the spiritual realms, all of that was kind of
So
norm
she was
for
into
us.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and her response was, well, I guess we'll see then.
Yeah.
And she went to Sedona. She had a friend in Sedona that she would visit every couple of years, and it wasn't long after that she went to visit her. And when she came back, she came into my room. I was in my bedroom, I remember, and she had a cassette tape. And she had gone to see a psychic when she was there, because Sedona's kind of known for that. And she said, Lisa, I need you to listen to this one part in my session that I had with the psychic. I was like, okay. And halfway through the session, the psychic said, you have a daughter that you're very close to. And this woman didn't know my mom at all. And my mom said, yes, you're right. And she said, well, you were sisters in a past life during the Renaissance time. Now, here I am I think I was 18 at the time, and I was like, okay, I know I've heard of reincarnation, but I hadn't really thought about it in any depth.
Right.
But that wasn't even the big thing. The next thing that the woman said was what really kind of went, oh. She said, and I don't know what it is, but I see, you knew a prince at that time of royalty. And she said, she says, I don't know if this means anything to you, but I keep getting the energy of Michael Jackson.
Wow.
Does that mean anything to you? And I was listening and going, oh my gosh. And my mom had said, well, that's weird that you would say that, because my daughter just told me a few weeks ago that she was, you know, seeing and feeling that he would come into our life one day.
Wow. Wow.
And so this woman said, yes, you knew him at that time, and you know, souls travel together.
And meanwhile, then, let's fast forward a little bit. You moved to the Central Valley in California, right? And your mom, family followed afterwards, which happened to be very close to Neverland, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
What happened?
Well, there was a series of things. I moved out in the October of '89. My mom and dad moved out in April of 1990. My mom ended up working at the health food store in Solvang, which is in the San Ynez Valley. Long story short, and there are several of these what I call the Michael miracles, the synchronicities that happened in that time that are defying, you know, logic and conventional thought. But one day, this woman was in the store, and my mom was helping her, and out of the blue, she said, you know, have you ever considered, she was actually the ranch manager, the head housekeeper out at Neverland, and she said to my mom, would you ever consider a job as a housekeeper out at Neverland? And my mom was like, why would you ask me that? And she says, well, I don't know what it is about you. You just seem like you would be perfect for the job.
Kind of like you belong there.
Yes. And so, you know, this was in January of 1993, you know, 5 years after I originally told my mom back in the small town in the Midwest that I sensed that Michael would come into our life.
And Michael had come up in her reading.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So she ended up working at Neverland for 3 years, and, you know, of course, got to know him, and I was able to be at Neverland several times, but unfortunately I wasn't able to meet him myself because he was on tour at the time.
But you were connecting, this connection began with kind of his soul's purpose, right? And did this happen more after his death, or was this happening before he died as well?
What is that?
Your connection that you were feeling about why he was, because I know a lot of the book is you know, why you think he came here possibly,
Yes.
and what we can learn from his life, right?
Yes. Well, you know, I was an observer of him for all those years, ever since that, you know, in '88 when I started to get those feelings. And one of the things that happened with my mom before she actually was asked by the housekeeper, the head housekeeper, to work there, about a year before, another woman had come into the store, and my mom said her description of her was that she looked a little lost. And when my mom went up to ask her if she needed help, the woman said, "Well, this might sound strange to you. I'm not really sure why I'm here, but I was led to this store in a dream by Michael Jackson."
Wow.
And of course, my mom was like, "Okay." And but this woman had said that my mom had said, "My daughter and I have a connection, a soul connection with him." And she said, "Yes." She says, "With the role that he chose in this life," and this was in the early 90s that she was saying this, that some of us agreed to come along to basically anchor his light. And this was before kind of his fall.
Right.
And it made much more sense of that when he did what I call the fall into the darkness, the ego.
Talk about that. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but can you give us sort of your take on what Michael was here to accomplish?
Well, obviously his role here was larger than life, and but basically what I believe Michael came here to demonstrate, to show, to exemplify is the struggle that we as human beings on this planet all have, and it's the struggle between the ego and the spirit. The ego and the spirit is all of us, and the ego, of course, is that part of ourselves that believes we're separate, that we're disconnected, that we're alone in this world, that we have to fight for what we have, and we have to fight each other. There's competition, greed, all of that. And then there's the spirit part of ourselves, that when we live from our heart and we recognize that we're connected with everyone and everything, that we can surrender and we can see that what we do to others, we do to ourselves. And so how I saw Michael's life is that, like, the first 25 years of his life, he was pure heart, spirit, innocence, purity. And when we're in that place, Spirit takes us, and he took us on a journey into the light. In my book, I kind of liken him to the mythological character Icarus, who flew too close to the sun. He took us with us, but because he flew too close to the sun, he singed his wings, and then he had the crash, which is the human drama here of falling into the ego, falling into the darkness. And his life exemplified, the next 25 years of his life were kind of about the ego journey of when we get addicted to various things, how we look, our appearances, the ego.
And he went through that whole cycle.
He went through the whole cycle. But the amazing thing is his last message that was exemplified in the movie This Is It, which is the documentary of his concert that never was to be.
Yeah.
But I actually see that it was perfectly divinely orchestrated, that he left us that message in movie form. Because if he would have carried through with the concert, he might not have even finished it, and the only people who would have seen it were the Michael fans. But this movie is for everybody, and it's there for everyone to see his true message, that in the end, his message was about love. And
it was about love, and you talk about how he reflects us, right? That's why you call it the man in the mirror, right?
What I observed in people was they either were very loving and understanding and compassionate towards him, or they were very angry and hateful and judgmental of him. And what I found is that it really is, where are we? I mean, what we see in the world is basically where we are in ourselves. And so Michael was the man in our mirror. What we saw in him, whether we saw compassion, whether we saw ourselves. On some level, we're seeing ourselves, whether it's in the light or in the darkness, but it's all the same. I mean, we all have the ego and the spirit, but in the end, we can always choose the love that's in our hearts.
So if you can stand back and look at his life objectively and see all these things that you point out in your book, which you take us through that in the book, and it's very skillfully done. One of the things that I thought corroborates your book is when, during the Conrad Murray trial, some of those phone tapes, when he taped Michael, when he was kind of going under the propofol, and I was amazed at you know, they say the truth comes out at those moments, right?
Right.
And Michael was muttering something about helping the children, or, you know, it was very authentic. It
Yes.
was the essence of who he was.
Yes.
And that was very powerful evidence for me that you were onto something in your book. Did you notice that with those tapes?
Yes, and you were so kind to keep me abreast on the trial because I was in the midst of writing, so you were filling me in. But yes, you know, he stayed true despite all of the criticism and all of the judgment. He never veered from his truth.
It was like a true soul purpose. That's what I felt came out at that moment, because you talk about, you know, in a sense, his mission to come here and his soul purpose, which you spell S-O-U-L and S-O-L-E, you know, so this is a very powerful, you know, like as if he deliberately chose to do this. And that just seemed to be the essence of who he was, even though that was the time when, as we now know, he was really struggling to, you know, get it together for those concerts.
Yes.
You know, so.
And it's remarkable of that he was able to, with what he was dealing with, to give a performance like he did.
It's amazing. That film, This Is It, is an amazing film.
It's incredible, and it is his last message and last mark that he's left with the world, and it's the most beautiful message.
Yeah,
so.
kind of the last testament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much I could say, but it's in
Right.
it's all in the book, and I am as a humble witness as anybody. I just feel like I've been sitting in the movie theater watching this all play out, and it's and Michael has helped me write this book, and you were the one that told me after he passed away that if I was open to it, he would help me, and he's been more present in my life even since he's passed. You know, it's just a small little veil, this life, death, whatever it is, the spirit realms. And he's shown up, and he's playful, and what he wants people to know is he's here. He's here for all of us. And his messages were in his song, you know, just call my name and I'll be there.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs.
Absolutely.
And you know what? There are a lot of people that feel like you do. You are not alone. And that's why I think that this book is
another one of his songs. You Are Not Alone.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. And when does the book come out, by the way?
Well, you know, I had all these great intentions of maybe a Christmas release date, but I've learned that to surrender it, and, you know, the creation process doesn't have timing.
Right.
So, you know, I have my ego idea of, you know, I'd like it to be this, but I'm surrendering to spirit, and, I mean, I'm
right. As Seth said, there's never any hurry on the creative plane. That's the channel,
right.
Being Seth, people. But so we know that the book is going to come out when it's the right time. But the book is finished. I want to say that. And Lisa's going through all the things that you do after you finish a book, which is having, you know, the other people read it, and then having the cover designed, and then you're going to go through the formatting, both for print and ebook. So this is, you know, you're in that stage. But to even make the decision to do this, it's like, who am I? You know, somebody from the Midwest that had this, you know.
Trust me, I've asked that question over and over. I'm like, you know, my best companion is my horse of 31 years.
Yes, Little Miss.
Little Miss, and she's got her own book coming out. But
Yes.
Meaning what I've learned from her about life. But yeah, I mean, there's been so many times I'm just that little Midwestern girl riding my horse through the fields. You know, it's like, why me to write this book?
And it's really a good example for any of you that are thinking of writing a book, because Lisa decided she was going to do it, had no idea how to do it, and then sort of surrendered to doing it. So, you know, it's just a great example that it is possible to write the book that you really love, write the book that comes from your heart.
Oh, and this one definitely comes from the heart and soul. So.
Well, thank you for being with us. And
thank you.
Congratulations, and we look forward
to
reading it when it comes out.